My mother pinned the family volunteer badge over the edge of my scar and pressed it flat with 2 fingers. "There," Evelyn said. "Now everyone will know where to go if they need programs or bottled water." Her smile was warm enough for anyone watching. That was Evelyn's gift. She could reduce you to a function and make it sound like she was trusting you with something important. I looked down at the white badge. The pin had caught the seam of my navy blouse, just above the pale line that ran from my right collarbone toward my shoulder. I could have moved it. I didn't. My left hand was already taking too long to fasten the stack of printed programs into neat bundles. The nerve damage had improved over the years, but small metal clips still turned simple tasks into private negotiations. Behind us, the auditorium at Briarwood Air National Guard Station was being dressed for my younger brother's promotion ceremony. Flags framed the stage, a lectern waited beneath the unit emblem. On a small velvet tray rested 2 silver eagles, polished for the moment Daniel Mercer would become a colonel. One of those eagles was supposed to be pinned on by his commander. The other was mine. Evelyn followed my eyes to the tray. "Just smile when you go up," she said quietly. "Daniel has worked too hard for today to become complicated." I slid another program under the clip. Complicated by what? She adjusted the volunteer badge again, though it was already straight. "By old stories. People ask questions when they hear you used to fly. Then you have to explain why you stopped, and the whole conversation becomes about recovery and disappointment." Today should stay focused on Daniel. I had been a flight nurse in the Air Force. I had spent years moving injured service members between places most families never saw, and hospitals they prayed their children would reach. I had stopped flying after a mission left my right shoulder damaged and 2 fingers on my left hand unreliable. Evelyn preferred the sentence, "Claire discovered she was better suited for planning." It sounded cleaner. It also made Daniel look devoted for standing by his damaged older sister anyway. I turned my wrist so the face of my watch rested against my skin. The watch had not worked in 13 years. Its hands were frozen at 2:17. Evelyn noticed the movement. "You're wearing that old thing?" "It goes with the blouse. It looks broken, it is." She waited for an explanation she had heard before and never liked. When I gave her none, she exhaled through her nose. "Family photographs are at 4. Daniel, me. Colonel Voss. Then the official party. We may do one with you afterward if there's time." "Afterward, you understand. The first photographs go in the unit newsletter." I looked toward the stage again, 2 silver eagles. "One older sister and a volunteer badge, I understand," I said. That answer satisfied her because Evelyn had spent most of my life mistaking my restraint for agreement. Daniel found me 10 minutes later in the narrow room behind the stage. He was wearing his service dress uniform, still carrying lieutenant colonel insignia on his shoulders. He looked sharp, calm, exactly like the man whose official biography described him as a steady leader in uncertain conditions. He closed the door behind him and held out a ceremony card. "You're on after Voss," he said. "She pins the right side. You pin the left, then we turn for the photo. I know how a pinning works." His expression softened into something that would have looked affectionate to anyone else. "I know you do." He reached for my badge and straightened it. His thumb brushed the edge of my scar without asking whether the area still hurt. "You put it over the seam," I said. "Mom probably thought it looked balanced." "She thought it marked my station, Claire." There was a warning in the way he said my name. Not anger, not yet, just the careful pressure he used when he wanted me to understand that a loyal sister would stop. I looked at the speech cards in his other hand. On the top card, beneath a line about courage, I saw 5 words written in his neat block lettering. "Stay when instinct says leave." I knew that sentence. Not exactly, but close enough to make something cold move behind my ribs. "What are you talking about today?" I asked, the usual. "Leadership, medical readiness, the people who carried me here." "Which people?" He glanced at the card, then tucked the stack against his chest. "Everyone, my team, my family, you," that line on the card. "What line?" "Staying when instinct says leave." He gave a small laugh. "It's a leadership phrase, Claire. Half the Air Force has probably used it." I had written something similar in a recovery journal 13 years earlier. I had written it at 3 in the morning, with my left hand shaking and my right arm strapped against my body. I had never published it, I had never used it in a speech. Daniel and my mother were the only people who knew where I kept the journal. He stepped closer. "Listen, there may be a reference to the evacuation." It's brief. It's about what that year taught us. That mission happened to me. The year happened to us. There it was, the question I had avoided for years. Was Daniel borrowing my pain, or had he started rewriting himself into the mission? My mission became our family's year. My injuries became our family's recovery. My memories became the emotional property of the Mercer name. I'm not asking you to make a correction in the middle of a ceremony, he said. I'm asking you to trust me not to embarrass either of us. A knock sounded before I could answer. Evelyn opened the door without waiting. Daniel, your special guest is here, Mr. Navarro. Daniel looked uncertain then, only for a second, then he smiled. Perfect, he said. Claire, you'll want to meet him. The man waiting near the reception table was in his early 50s, broad through the shoulders, with a slight hitch in his right leg. He wore a dark suit and no ribbons, pins, or veteran cap. His hair had gone gray at the temples, a thin white line crossed his jaw. Daniel approached him with both hands extended. Gabriel Navarro. I'm glad you made it. Gabriel shook his hand once. You said Lieutenant Mercer would be here, Daniel's smile held. That's my sister, Claire. Then he turned and presented me as if I had just come with the room. Claire works in emergency planning these days. Gabriel looked at my face. Then my shoulder, then the wrist I had turned inward. His eyes stopped on the steel band of the broken watch. Mercer? He asked. The room seemed to contract around that one word. I had not heard my name spoken in that tone for years. Not as a question about paperwork, not as a name someone had carried through pain. Gabriel, Daniel said quickly. Claire doesn't always like revisiting that period. Gabriel did not look at him. You told me to keep talking, he said to me. I remembered a man on a litter whose blood pressure would not stay where I needed it. I remembered him trying to apologize to people who were not there. I remembered asking him about the worst truck he had ever owned, because ordinary irritation kept people attached to the world. But memory after trauma is not a film, it is light in the wrong places. A glove torn at the thumb, a voice under engine noise. The weight of a hand that might stop answering yours. I told a lot of people to keep talking, I said. You asked about my truck. Despite myself, I smiled. Was it still a Ford? Unfortunately. Daniel laughed louder than either of us. There we go. Old memories. Gabriel finally looked at him. You were assigned to the receiving side? The question was neutral. Daniel answered too fast. I supported the operation from stateside. Claire and I went through the aftermath together. That was true. It was also the first careful line in a wall he had spent years building. Evelyn appeared with a photographer and guided Gabriel toward the front. We need our honored guest near the stage. Claire finished setting out the water. Gabriel held my gaze. Later. It sounded less like a promise to expose anything than a request to confirm that the person he remembered still existed. Daniel leaned close. He remembers fragments. Don't turn fragments into a crisis. You invited him. He's part of the veteran outreach program. Did you know he remembered me? I knew he remembered a flight nurse. His jaw tightened. Colonel Miriam Voss entered with an aide and a folder. Compact, close-cropped, and precise. She confirmed I would pin Daniel's left side, glanced once at my volunteer badge, and set the order, remarks, oath, pinning, photographs. 25 minutes, Evelyn relaxed, a ceremony small enough to control. That was the plan. At 4 o'clock, the auditorium doors closed. I sat beside Evelyn in the front row. Gabriel sat across the aisle. Colonel Voss opened with the usual language about service, responsibility, and the weight of command. She spoke for less than 4 minutes. Daniel's official biography followed. It described degrees, assignments, readiness initiatives, and medical programs. All of it sounded accurate. That mattered later. A lie surrounded by truth is easier to carry into a room. Then Daniel stepped to the lectern. He thanked Voss. He thanked Evelyn. He thanked the unit. He thanked me last. My sister, Claire, taught me that leadership is not about where you stand when things are easy. He looked directly at me. It is about whether you remain when every instinct tells you to leave. The wording struck like a hand on an old bruise, Daniel continued. 13 years ago, during an aeromedical evacuation under deteriorating conditions, I learned that lesson in a way I would never forget. Gabriel shifted across the aisle. I stared at Daniel. He had referred to the evacuation before. At a donor dinner, he had said our family learned courage during that mission. At a seminar, he had described the months after my injury. Each time, he stayed close enough to the truth to make correction feel petty. This was different. He was placing himself inside the aircraft. We had multiple casualties, he said, limited time. Conflicting information. At 2:17 that morning, my watch stopped after it struck the litter frame. My fingers closed around my own wrist, the watch face pressed into my skin. No one in that room could see the hands frozen at 2:17. Daniel could not have known the time from an after-action summary. The broken watch had never been part of an award citation or a public interview. I had written about it once in a journal I kept during rehabilitation. Across the aisle, Gabriel's head lifted, Daniel went on. One of our parascumen was fading. The aircraft commander was weighing options. I remember putting pressure on the wound and realizing leadership meant staying when every instinct told me to leave. He used the wrong term for the medical configuration. Small error, huge meaning. Gabriel's hand tightened on the armrest. Daniel smiled toward him, and one of the men who survived that night is here with us today. Applause began. Gabriel did not join it. He stood. The clapping thinned unevenly. Daniel paused, still smiling. Gabriel's voice was not loud. It did not need to be. Colonel Mercer wasn't on that aircraft. The room simply lost its rhythm. A photographer lowered her camera. Daniel's smile stayed in place a second too long. Gabriel turned toward me. She was. Evelyn whispered my name like a reprimand. Daniel lifted one hand from the lectern. I think there may be some confusion after all these years. Gabriel ignored him. He looked at me. Were you the senior medical officer on that flight? This was the moment Daniel had counted on me to smooth. I could have said titles did not matter. I could have told Gabriel we would speak later. I could have turned one more theft into a misunderstanding and allowed the ceremony to continue. For years I had believed silence was the price of being loved by someone who had seen me broken. I looked at Daniel. He gave the smallest shake of his head. Not now, not yes, I said. I was. Daniel's hand flattened on the lectern. I added the part he had spent 13 years blurring. Daniel was stateside. For several seconds nobody moved. Then Daniel recovered. He had always been good at recovering in public. He smiled as though Gabriel and I had helped him illustrate a point. Exactly, he said. Claire was on the aircraft. I supported the operation from home station and we lived the aftermath together. The story has always been about the larger medical team. Gabriel looked at him without expression. That is not what you said. Daniel shifted his attention back to the audience. I may have compressed details for the sake of time. The lesson remains the same. Colonel Voss rose from her seat near the stage. She did not look angry. She looked attentive. Colonel Select Mercer, she said. Let's pause the remarks. Daniel's shoulders tightened. Voss turned to the audience. We'll take a brief recess before the pinning. People stood slowly. Conversations started in low voices, then stopped whenever one of us passed near them. Evelyn grabbed my forearm. What have you done? I looked down at her hand until she released me. I answered a question. You knew what this would look like. I knew what he said. He was speaking about leadership, not writing an operations report. That does not put him on the aircraft. She glanced toward Gabriel. He is injured. He may remember things in pieces. Gabriel heard her. So do I, he said. That's why I only said what I know. Daniel stepped down from the stage and joined us before Evelyn could answer. His voice was calm. Claire, come with me. We moved into the side hall away from the guests. Voss and her aide remained near the stage. Gabriel followed at a distance. Daniel waited until the auditorium doors closed. You need to tell Voss this was a misunderstanding. It wasn't. It was a story about a shared year. You said you were pressing Gabriel's wound. I said I learned the lesson. You said your watch stopped. His eyes moved to my wrist. That was the first time he looked at the watch that afternoon. It's a detail, he said. It's my detail. He lowered his voice. You agreed years ago that I could talk about what we went through. I agreed you could talk about helping me after I came home. Those things are connected, not in the air. He exhaled and glanced toward the auditorium, measuring how much time he had. Gabriel remembers pieces. You know what trauma does to memory. The sentence was aimed at me, not him. I felt its shape before he completed it. You've had the same problem, Daniel continued. Recovery memories overlap with operational memories. That is normal. We both know that. My shoulder seemed to stiffen beneath the fabric. Are you saying I imagined the flight? Of course not. I'm saying your version is emotionally charged. My version has a crew manifest. He leaned closer. Do you want this to become an investigation? Do you want every medical note, every therapy session, Every period when you could not sleep or remember what day it was opened, because you decided to challenge the wording in a ceremony speech. For a moment I saw the brother who had sat beside my hospital bed. The brother who had learned how to help me into a shirt without pulling my damaged shoulder. The brother who had counted pills when I could not focus. He was using that knowledge now with the same precision. "You said something about pages," I said, his eyes narrowed. "What pages?" "In the auditorium. You said I let you use those pages." "I said you let me use the story." "No, you said pages." He looked past me. Gabriel had stopped near the drinking fountain. He was close enough to hear, but he turned his body away to give us the appearance of privacy. Daniel touched my elbow. "Claire, we can deal with this at home. Right now, tell Voss Gabriel misunderstood a composite story. A composite of whose life?" His grip tightened just enough to hurt. Then Gabriel spoke. "Ma'am, Daniel released me." Gabriel approached slowly. "I don't want to make this worse," he said to me, "but I need you to know I never told him the time." "What time?" 2:17. I remembered the watch after I saw it today. I didn't remember the exact time until he said it. Daniel gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "This is coming absurd." Gabriel looked at him. "You also called the litter system by a name we did not use on that aircraft. Someone who read about the mission might make that mistake. Someone who was there would not." Daniel's face changed, not with panic but calculation. He turned toward the auditorium. "I'm going to speak to Colonel Voss." "So am I," said. He stopped. "You are making a permanent decision in a temporary emotional state." The old language again, clinical without being clinical. Concern shaped like a locked door. I met his eyes. "No, I made the temporary decision for years." I stayed quiet. Gabriel and I went into a small conference room while Daniel spoke with Voss in the hall. I asked Gabriel to tell me what he remembered, and only what he remembered. He did not give me a perfect account. That made me trust him more. He remembered the engine noise and the cold around his legs. He remembered a female voice refusing to call him sir, because he kept trying to answer like he was still responsible for the men around him. He remembered being asked about a pickup truck he hated. He remembered opening his eyes and seeing a cracked watch face near his chest. He did not remember my rank. He did not remember the sequence of every medical intervention. He did not remember landing. "I was told later what you did," he said. "But the watch and the truck are mine. Did you ever tell Daniel about the watch?" "No. Did you send him anything from the mission?" "Only a short note about wanting to thank Lieutenant Mercer." "Did he know that was me?" "He said his sister had been a flight nurse named Claire Mercer." "I assumed he was trying to arrange a reunion. Why did he invite you today?" "He said the promotion was built on lessons from military medicine, and that you would be here." He rubbed his right knee. "I thought I was coming to thank you both. You for the flight, him for helping you after." The distinction was simple. Daniel had spent years erasing it. The door opened. Colonel Voss stood there with her aide. "Miss Mercer," she said, "I need to ask whether you are alleging Colonel Select Mercer knowingly represented your operational experience as his own." "I am saying he was not on the aircraft. That part can be verified." Daniel appeared behind her, "And it should be," he said. "I have no objection. I used a composite leadership story, not a claim for an award." Voss turned to him. "Was any version of this story included in your official biography or command screening materials?" "No," Daniel said. The answer came immediately, too immediately. Voss's aide looked down at the folder she carried. "Sir, the ceremony biography includes the evacuation." Daniel's attention snapped to her. "Public Affairs drafted that." "From source material you approved? I would need to review it." Voss was silent for a moment. Then she said, "We are going to continue the ceremony with the scripted pinning and remove the remaining remarks. The biography and speech materials will be preserved for review." "This is not a finding, it is a precaution." Daniel nodded as if the decision proved him right. "Of course." Then he looked at me. There was relief in his eyes. He believed he had won. The auditorium filled again. Guests returned to their seats, carrying curiosity they tried to disguise as courtesy. Daniel stood on the stage beside Colonel Voss. The oath was administered without incident. Then Voss took the silver eagle from the velvet tray and pinned it to Daniel's right shoulder. My turn. I walked onto the stage. The second insignia waited under the lights. Daniel faced me and smiled for the cameras. I could feel Evelyn watching from the front row. I could feel Gabriel somewhere behind her. My left fingers struggled with the clasp. Daniel leaned close enough that only I could hear him. Thank you for remembering what matters. I fixed the eagle to his left shoulder. Applause began. For 1 minute, Daniel looked like a colonel whose ceremony had survived an awkward interruption. That was his false victory. When I stepped off the stage, Evelyn met me at the documentation table. Put these away, she whispered, pushing a stack of printed biographies toward me. No one needs more material to misunderstand. I took the top copy. A paragraph halfway down described Daniel's leadership during an aeromedical evacuation 13 years earlier. It mentioned a failing pararescueman. It mentioned the moment a watch stopped. It mentioned 217, and it used a sentence I had written alone in a rehabilitation apartment while Daniel slept in the next room. I read it twice, then I walked back toward Colonel Voss. Voss was speaking with a senior enlisted leader near the stage when I approached. I waited until she finished. "Ma'am," I said, holding out the biography. "This is not just an error in the speech." She read the marked paragraph. Her expression did not change. "Which part is false?" "The first person claim, the time, the description of the patient." "And this sentence," I pointed to the line about staying when every instinct said to leave. "That language came from a private recovery journal." Daniel had followed me. "Claire," he said, "you do not know where public affairs sourced every phrase." "I know where I wrote it." Voss looked at him. "Did you provide source material for this biography?" "I provided background notes, nothing confidential." "Did those notes include your sister's journal?" "No." The denial was not as fast this time. Voss handed the biography to her aide. "Find the command screening statement in the package we received last month." Daniel's face tightened. "That document is unrelated to a ceremonial biography." "It may be," Voss said. "We will determine that from the documents." She motioned toward a small office behind the auditorium. Once inside, she closed the door. The aide logged into the personnel repository and opened the command screening package the unit had received the previous month. Nothing classified was involved. These were personnel and leadership documents, the kind of records people assume are boring until they discover a life can be built inside a paragraph. The command screening statement opened on the screen. The third page contained the evacuation, not as a shared family experience. Not as an example from someone else's service, as Daniel's own defining test. He described holding pressure on a pararescueman's wound while the aircraft fought deteriorating conditions. He described his watch striking a metal frame. He described making a decision to remain with the patient when others were preparing for a change in flight plan. Gabriel had been right. The technical language was wrong in exactly the way a person would be wrong if he had copied emotional details without understanding the equipment around them. Daniel stood beside me. "This is a leadership narrative," he said. "It is not a sworn operational claim." Voss looked at him. "Is it presented as something you personally experienced?" "It synthesizes experiences from my career. Were you on the aircraft?" "No." "Is the patient real?" "Yes." "Is the time real?" He hesitated. "I believe so. Did you learn it from Miss Mercer?" "I learned many things from my sister." He kept turning theft into family loyalty. Voss told her aide to open the declassified crew manifest referenced in the medical history annex and cross-check it against the unit personnel system. No secrets appeared, only names. Claire Mercer appeared on the crew manifest. Gabriel Navarro appeared among the evacuated personnel. Daniel Mercer did not appear anywhere in the operation. A declassified summary identified me as the senior medical officer responsible for coordinating care during the flight. It did not call me a hero. It did not need to. Voss read the relevant lines, then looked at Daniel. "You were not there. I have never disputed that I was at home station. You disputed it on paper. I used first person to make a leadership lesson immediate. That explanation will be included in the review." The word review changed the room. Until then, Daniel had treated the problem as a performance error he could manage. A review meant the story no longer belonged to him, me, or our family alone. It would be examined by people who had no reason to preserve the Mercer version of a perfect military family. He turned to me. "You wanted this?" "No, you brought it here." "You brought it here." The aide scrolled through the attachment list. One file had no descriptive title, only a date and a scanned document icon. The thumbnail showed handwriting. My handwriting. "Open that," I said. Daniel took a step toward the workstation. "Those are personal source notes." Voss raised a hand. "Do not touch the computer." The aide opened the file. For a second, I did not understand what I was seeing. The page was yellowed at the edges. A faint coffee-colored stain crossed one corner. My handwriting slanted downward because my left hand had tired before I reached the bottom. Then I saw the small drawing of the watch.
2 hands fixed at 2:17.
The room seemed to move away from me. That page had come from my rehabilitation journal. I had written it 6 weeks after the mission, because a therapist said memory sometimes stopped circling when you gave it a place to land. I had described Gabriel's blood on my gloves. I had described the aircraft noise. I had written that I stayed because leaving him alone with his fear felt worse than staying with mine. The command statement used the same structure. It changed I held his hand to I held pressure. It changed I was a flight nurse to I was the medical leader. It changed Claire into Daniel. The aide opened the next page. Then another, 7 in total. They were not the pages about pain medication, insomnia, or the days I could not raise my right arm. Daniel had selected the pages with action, decision, and fear. The pages that could be polished into leadership. I reached for the back of a chair. Voss asked, "Did you provide these pages to your brother for professional use?" "No. Did you know they had been scanned?" "No." Daniel's voice softened. "You let me read the journal. I let you sit beside me while I wrote. You asked me to understand what happened. I did not ask you to become me." His eyes moved briefly toward Voss and the aide. "Can we discuss the personal part privately?" The request almost made me laugh. He had placed the personal part in a command package. The aide examined the file properties. "The metadata carries the device name Mercer Office," she said. The scan was later moved into Colonel Select Mercer's personal working folder. I knew that device name. It belonged to the old multifunction printer in my mother's home office. Daniel closed his eyes for half a second. That was enough. Evelyn was in the family preparation room, rearranging flowers that no longer had a ceremony to decorate. When I entered, she looked up sharply. "Colonel Voss sent everyone home?" She asked the guests to leave. Evelyn's mouth tightened. This did not have to happen. I set a printed image of the first journal page on the table. "Did you copy this?" She did not look at it. "Daniel was trying to learn from you." "That was not my question. You were barely functioning." Insurance wanted documents. Therapists wanted documents. Everyone wanted something from him. "Did you copy my journal?" She folded a length of ribbon, then unfolded it. "He asked me to use the machine because yours was unreliable." "How many pages?" "I do not remember." 7. Her face changed at the number. "Not surprise, recognition, you remember." "I remember there were only a few." "Why those pages?" He marked them with what? Small tabs. The room went quiet. Daniel had not accidentally received the wrong stack while managing paperwork. He had chosen the pages. Evelyn finally looked at me. "He said he wanted to understand the mission. You would not talk about it. So he copied it. He was your brother. He drove you to appointments. Do not erase that because of a few paragraphs. Those things were real." "So were the 7 pages. What did he do with the copies?" "He wrote a speech. Years later, you heard it? Parts of it." "Did you recognize my words?" "I recognized the situation." "Did you tell him to stop?" Her eyes sharpened. "I told him Claire had abandoned that life." There was no reason to keep asking permission from someone who wanted the whole period forgotten. The answer was cruel because it was close to something I had believed. I had wanted the pain forgotten, not my name removed. Evelyn reached for my hand. "Please, he is about to become a colonel." I stepped back before she touched me. "He became one 10 minutes ago." "No, not like this. Not with people whispering, not with one side of his uniform photographed and the other questioned. He used my life to make that uniform fit. That is not fair." "No," I said, "it isn't." The door opened behind me. Daniel stood there. He had heard enough to know denial was finished. Daniel closed the door behind him. Evelyn moved toward him at once, but he held up a hand. "Mom, go home. I am not leaving you here alone with this. This is between Claire and me." I looked at the printed journal page on the table. "You made it part of your command package. It stopped being between us when you submitted it." Daniel's eyes went to the page. He no longer pretended not to know what it was. "I should have asked. That sentence is too small." "What do you want me to say?" "The truth would be a start. I used material from our family, my life. I drove you to therapy. I counted your pills. I carried the year after, and you turned caring for my recovery into ownership of the mission." His voice sharpened. "I never took an award from you. You took the part of my life people listened to. You were done with it." The cruelty was that his care had been real. There were nights when he kept me from disappearing into pain and mornings, when he waited until I swallowed my medication. He had also watched my gratitude harden into a debt he could collect. Colonel Voss's aide entered and asked Daniel to return to the office. File version history had been located, Evelyn whispered. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Daniel looked at me. You can still end this. No, I said. I can stop ending it for you. The version history was less dramatic than the speech and more damaging. There were 3 official uses. The earliest was a leadership biography created 5 years ago. In that version, the story referred to my older sister, a flight nurse. Daniel had not claimed to be on the aircraft. He had used my experience as an example of courage. The second version, prepared for a command development seminar 2 years later, removed my name and changed the narrator to our medical team. The watch remained. Gabriel remained. The sentence about staying remained. The final version, used in his command screening statement and ceremony profile, changed our team to I. A document comparison displayed the alterations one after another. Claire became older sister disappeared. R became I. The words moved across the screen in colored marks, but the pattern was simple. Daniel had not stolen the story in one impulsive decision. He had tested how much of me he could remove, learned that no one objected, and continued. I had heard the second version at the donor dinner. I had objected only in private. Then I had accepted his explanation that he was protecting my privacy by leaving out my name. That had been my mistake. He did not create my silence, but he learned how to use it. Voss asked Daniel whether he had approved each version. I approved the documents, he said. I did not personally make every edit. Who changed the narrative to first person? I do not recall. The aide pointed to the account history. The edits had been made under Daniel's login. He looked at the screen. I may have revised it for clarity. Did you intend readers to understand that you were personally on the aircraft? Voss asked. I intended them to understand that the experience shaped my leadership. That was not the question. Daniel's jaw flexed. I did not expect a leadership statement to be treated like sworn testimony. No conclusion has been made, Voss said, but the pending command assignment will be held while an administrative fact-finding reviews these materials and your explanation. The ceremony will not resume today. Evelyn made a sound behind me. Daniel did not turn around. What about the promotion? He asked. Voss chose her words carefully. This room is not the place to make a final determination about your status. You will receive instructions through the appropriate channels. For today the event is over. No one touched the silver eagle already pinned to Daniel's shoulder. Voss simply ended the event and removed the certainty from the future he had arranged. Voss asked the aide to preserve copies of the speech, biographies, source scans, and version history. She asked Gabriel for contact information and told me I might be contacted for a statement. Then she left us with the stage light still on and the audience gone. The auditorium looked smaller without witnesses. Programs had been abandoned on seats. A paper cup stood near the aisle. The velvet tray remained on the stage. The right shoulder of Daniel's uniform carried the silver eagle Voss had pinned. The left carried the one I had attached. He followed my gaze. Claire, please. It was the first time that day he sounded like my little brother instead of an officer managing an incident. I walked onto the stage. He came after me. I will withdraw from the command assignment, he said. Voluntarily. We can tell them the statement was written badly. I will correct every biography. You are still negotiating. I am trying to save what can be saved. Your assignment? Our family, you offered the assignment first. His face tightened. What do you expect me to do? I cannot go back 13 years and change how I handled those pages. You could start by not calling it handling. I made a terrible judgment. You made it many times. He looked toward the empty seats. Do you know what it was like to stand beside you after that mission? Everyone asked about you. Everyone wanted to hear what you had done. Then they looked at me as the younger brother carrying your bag. I let the space hold between us. I wanted him to continue without giving him words to fight. I had done good work, he said. I had built programs. I had kept clinics operating, but none of it sounded like courage. Your story made people listen, so you used it. At first I used it to explain what leadership looked like. Then you put yourself inside it. I was inside what came after. You keep saying that as if recovery and memory are the same room. He stepped closer. I was there for everything after. The sentence landed between us. I looked at my brother who had held my hand through pain and later used that hand to sign his name beneath my experience. You were there for my recovery, I said. You weren't there for my life. His eyes filled, but grief did not make him innocent. Tell Voss you consented to the story, he said. I will still accept the review. Just do not let them think I stole from you. There it was. Even now, he wanted me to rescue his preferred description of what he had done. On the velvet tray sat an empty slot and a small fastening tool. The ceremony assistant had left the original lieutenant colonel insignia in a separate envelope. I reached up to Daniel's left shoulder. He went still. I unclasped the silver eagle I had pinned less than an hour earlier. I did not tear it off. I did not throw it. I placed it back on the tray. The faint sound of metal against velvet was enough. Evelyn came to the foot of the stage. Claire, do not do this for an audience that is already left. That is why I am doing it now. Daniel looked at the bare spot on his shoulder. What does this accomplish? It removes me from the picture you were trying to finish. I picked up my purse and the box containing the printed journal pages. Gabriel was waiting near the exit. He did not turn the moment into another ceremony. He only held the door. As I passed, he said, I am sorry I helped bring this into your family. You did not bring it in. That part mattered. Gabriel had not caused what Daniel did. He had only interrupted my willingness to ignore it. At my mother's house, 2 coffee mugs still sat in the sink while our family changed shape. I went to my old bedroom. The rehabilitation journal was in the bottom drawer of the locked metal cabinet where I had left it after recovery. The lock showed no damage. Daniel had never needed to break in. Evelyn had copied the pages before I started locking things. I placed the journal, my medical records, old correspondence, and the external drive containing my personal files in a document box. Last, I removed the broken watch. For years, I had worn it because it reminded me that time could stop without life ending. It had also become a private test. Whenever Daniel told the story without saying 217, I convinced myself he had not taken the part that mattered most. He had. Daniel entered as I closed the box. Evelyn stood behind him in the hall. You are taking everything. I am taking what is mine. The journal was in Mom's house, so was my childhood. That did not make either of them yours. He said he had emailed Voss, agreed to cooperate, and offered to withdraw from the command assignment. That is your decision. I am sorry, he said. I thought using the story honored what you survived. You honored the version that made you important. I was important, yes. You were my brother. That should have been enough. He looked at the box. Are you going to tell them I used your medical condition against you? I am going to answer what they ask. Evelyn spoke from the hallway. Do not let one mistake destroy this family. I lifted the box. One mistake did not do this. Repeating it did. Neither of them stopped me. I left the framed photograph from Daniel's commissioning on the hall table. I was in uniform, but it had always been displayed as proof of Daniel's beginning. 3 weeks later, Daniel's official biography disappeared from the unit website. The pending command assignment remained on hold. I received notice that an administrative fact-finding was reviewing the source materials and the accuracy of statements he had submitted. No one promised me what the final outcome would be. That was important too. Justice is not always a room where someone announces that you were right. Sometimes it is a process that finally stops asking you to carry the lie while everyone else decides what to call it. Gabriel sent me one message. It said the truck was a Chevy. I remembered wrong. I laughed, something I had not done in days. Then he added, but you were there. Evelyn left 4 voicemails. In the first, she blamed me. In the second, she blamed Gabriel. In the third, she said Daniel had only used what the family had already survived together. In the fourth, she asked whether I would speak to her before outsiders permanently damaged the Mercer name. I saved none of them. Daniel wrote a longer apology. He admitted that the attention he received from the early version of the story had felt good. He admitted that each change had seemed small because I had not stopped him publicly. He said he understood now that my silence had never been consent. Then, in the final paragraph, he asked me to tell the review board that he had acted from admiration rather than ambition. He was still editing. I did not answer. In my apartment, I bought a small locking records case. I placed the rehabilitation journal inside it. I added the original mission correspondence and the watch with its cracked face and frozen hands. On a white label I wrote Claire Mercer Personal Records. I did not write Mercer Family Archive. I needed one thing in the room that did not belong to a family story, a promotion package, or anyone's idea of legacy. I turned the key. The watch still read 217. It probably always would. After 13 years, it finally rested in a place where I alone decided who could open the box. If family loyalty has ever been used as permission in your life, where would you draw the line?